Hello YouTube and welcome to the next routes learning video. On today's video I'm going to be driving the Armstrong Powerhouse Class 205 on an empty coaching stock run following the path of train 5 Juliet 69, which is the 8:26 service from London Bridge to Selhurst Depot. The total distance for the journey is just over 12 miles, and I'm going to drive from here to Norwood Yard, which is very close to the depot, and then have to do a reversal so I can drive the unit into the sidings. The Class 205 diesel-electric multiple unit was in service between 1957 and 2004 and was manufactured by BR at Eastleigh Works. A total of 34 of these train sets were produced, formed of 2 or 3 cars per unit. The maximum speed is 75 miles per hour, and with the prime mover being an English Electric 4 SRKT Mark II 4-cylinder diesel engine, they have a maximum power output of 600 horsepower or 450 kilowatts at 850 RPM. Once in the cab of the Class 205, there's a fairly complex setup procedure that I've got to go through, which is a lot more detailed than you would find in most trains within Train Simulator. However, I'm not going to go into detail every function of the Class 205, as there are some functions that I don't need to use to set up the unit in this video. And indeed, I will be making a train guide on this unit in future, just to really go into much more detail about the various systems which have been simulated within the Class 205 unit. So the first thing that I need to do is to put the brake handle, which is just over here on the left, into the emergency position. So I've now moved the brake handle all of the way into the emergency position. So the next thing I now need to do is press Shift and W to turn the master key. And now that I've done that, I need to move the reversing handle into the engine only position. So you can see the reversing handle there, which is the black one at the bottom in front of us here. And if I just move that now, moved it one position, and then moved it into the engine only position, at which point I then reset the AWS self-test sequence. Now that I've done that, I need to move the brake handle back to the EP position, which would be between 0 and 44% on the HUD. And I believe it is now in the EP position there, so I just moved it up slightly further to ensure the brakes are fully applied. And now that I've done that, the next thing I'm going to do is press J, which turns on the head code box lights. And now that I've done that, I need to press H to turn on the headlights. The next thing I need to do here is actually set the head code in the cab. As this is an empty coaching stock run, if I remember correctly in the past, they used to just have 2 blank white squares in the head code box, so I'm just going to set that up now. So what you need to do is you need to click on the unlatched button, which I did just there, and then open the door. And now I need to just hover over this handle here, and I just need to move it to the left until it says white blank, and that means that I have now got it in the correct position. Just do the same on the other side. And now the head code, when I look outside, you'll just see 2 blank white squares in the head code box. So just close that up and now latch it back once again. And now that I've done that, I need to set up the cab secure radio, which I'll go into detail about now. In front of us here you can see the cab secure radio, which is the radio system you would use to contact the signalman. Unfortunately we don't have the audio available in the game to be able to hear it properly, but you can still set it up how it would have to be done in real life. So the first thing I'm going to do here is click on the on button, which is on the far left. Now that I've done that, you'll see that the lights will come on, and now we've got a message saying area not set. So I now need to set the CSR area. Now, when you load up the scenarios that come with the Class 205, then if you look at the briefing, it will give you the area code already. So what I need to do now is press the AR button, or area button, and I now need to type in 3030, which is the CSR area. If you make a mistake when typing, then you simply need to click the hash key to go back, and then once you've typed it incorrectly, you then need to click on the asterisk key to validate the CSR area. I'm now waiting for it to register on the left of the screen. Once it does so, then you should see the number 30, as you can see now just on the left of the screen on its own, which means that we have registered on, we have registered the CSR area. Now what I need to do is to test the system by pressing the T button to test the connection. So I've just got to wait now until that says that the test has all gone through okay. And as you can see there, it now says test okay. The next part of setting up the CSR that you need to do is that you need to enter the signal number in front of the train so that the system is aware of just where this train is. So I now need to press the SU button, and the signal in front of us is signal Lima 489, which in this case would be represented by typing in 0489. And now that I've done that, I need to once again press the asterisk and wait for it to register the unit on the system. Once it does so, then on the right hand side of the screen you will see the train's head code come up, and as you can see we've now got 5 Juliet 69 on the right of the screen, which indicates that we are fully set up on the system. As we travel on this journey, we will pass through a number of different CSR areas with different codes. However, you don't need to re-enter these as we're driving. The system will actually automatically change the code itself, and we will pass the number of CSR posts at the side of the track with the code numbers on. And shortly after passing them, you'll then hear a beep, and when you hear that beep in the cab, then that indicates that the CSR has changed its area. So now we've looked at the CSR, let's just consider a few more of the controls in the cab, and then we can get started and depart towards Selhurst. Now that we're back in the main area of the cab, the next thing I'm going to do is press I just to turn on the instrument lights there, and I'm also now going to move the reversing handle into the forward position, which will allow me to move the throttle in a short while, just to try and demonstrate another dial in the cab, which is actually currently hidden behind the throttle handle. Now if we go over to the left hand side, I'm just going to click on the window and then drag it open, and that's just because I prefer the sound of the engine with the windows open. Now if we look down here, you can see the brake handle. On the right hand side you can see the brake cylinder pressure gauge. When the brake cylinder pressure gauge needle is pointing to 0, that means the brakes are fully released, and the higher that needle is pointing, then the harder the brakes are applied. On the brake handle there are 2 braking systems installed, the first being the EP or electro-pneumatic brake, and the second being the automatic brake. So if I just move the handle now in the EP area up or down, you can see that I've got a graduated apply and release here. So if I just move the handle up slightly, then the brakes will apply slightly, and if I move it down slightly, then the brakes will release slightly. Now if I move the brakes all the way to the release position and wait for the brake cylinder pressure to get to 0, I can now move the handle up to the automatic brake setting. So I just kept my finger on the brake handle there, and you can see that it's moved quite a distance and it hasn't applied the brakes. Now at this point, to apply the brakes, what I need to do is press the apply button, and then I just need to hold that in until I reach the desired brake cylinder pressure, then let go, and the brake handle will spring back into the hold position. So say I want a brake pressure of 25, if I now press the brake apply button, you can see the needle climbing, and now I let go at just around 25, got to just over it there, and you can see that the brakes stopped applying at that point. Now here, if I need to release the brake, I then need to hold the release button until the handle is all the way back past the EP position to the full release position. One other important thing to mention about the braking system on the Class 205 is that Armstrong Powerhouse have tried to go for a realistic tread brake simulation. Tread brakes, which are also known as block brakes, involve blocks of metal clamping onto the wheels to slow the train down. Now, with the tread brakes, they actually lose effectiveness at higher speeds, so the faster you're going, the slower the train will actually brake. And that's one important thing to bear in mind when driving the Class 205 in Train Simulator, and as we get to lower speeds, then the brake efficacy will increase, and ultimately we'll be able to stop the train more easily. In front of us here we have the horn control, which is a 2-tone horn controlled with the spacebar and the B key. And as I sounded the horn there, you probably noticed one of the needles on the duplex gauge there actually moved, which indicates that I'm using air in the horn system. And now over here we've got the speedometer measured in miles per hour, and then here you can see the throttle control. Now the throttle control here is a 7-notch or 7-step throttle, and as I start increasing the power, you can see just behind the throttle control there the ammeter, and you can see it's currently pointing to 600, representing 600 amps. When driving the Class 205, the aim is to really try and not get above 800 amps for any significant period of time, for if you do, you may actually overload the unit, and then you have to go through a fault reset procedure before you can continue on your journey. Now that we've had a look around the cab and had a look at the setup procedure and controls, let's take another look at the outside of the unit, and then we can depart and head out towards Selhurst depot. Departing London Bridge, the starting speed limit is 20 miles per hour, and we've got just over 11.5 miles to go to our stopping point at Norwood Yard. At this point, I'm just going to gradually increase the throttle to gradually bring our speed up towards 20 miles per hour until we can accelerate further. The speed limit will be going up to 60 miles per hour quite shortly, though we probably won't be able to get up to that before we need to slow down for a further upcoming speed restriction at 45 miles per hour. And as you're soon going to see, the acceleration rate in the Class 205 leaves much to be desired. Now that we've reached 20 miles per hour, I've just idled the power to allow the train to coast for a moment. We've just passed the 60 mile per hour speedboard, indicating that we will soon be able to travel at 60 miles per hour. And what I'm looking out for now is a signal gantry with a series of signals facing the opposite direction, which is the next gantry coming up, and then at that point I can then go up to full power to start accelerating up towards 60. I'm now in full power and bringing our speed up quite nicely. Shortly we're going to encounter a Morpeth board warning for a 40 mile per hour speed restriction, and in fact there will be an AWS warning associated with that. However, this is a Morpeth board which can be disregarded as it's for a different route. Just reached the Morpeth board warning now, and at this point we've got 3/4 of a mile to go to an upcoming 45 mile per hour speed restriction. As we're now reaching 45 miles per hour, I'm just going to idle the power at this point and allow the train to coast until we can accelerate further. We're now turning away from the southeastern main line and Brighton main line towards East Croydon, and very shortly we're going to be passing through South Bermondsey Station. We've just passed into a new CSR area. So the CSR system will now change to indicate that we're in the new area. speed limit is now going back up to 60 miles per hour. However, as you'll have noticed there, we had a double yellow signal, so I am now braking to slow the unit down, and it looks like the next signal might be a single yellow, at which point I'm going to continue to brake, assuming that the next signal is displaying a red aspect until I can see otherwise. As this is an empty coaching stock run, in fact, we're going to have quite a number of adverse signals against us, as empty coaching stock takes a much lower priority than passenger trains or high-speed freight. We're now crossing the junction where the London Overground route from Canada Water joins us. Now, as this scenario is set in 2004, I don't actually believe that this junction was there at that time. I just saw the next signal a moment ago change to a single yellow, so I released the brakes, and I'm just allowing the train to coast at this point, as I can see the red signal ahead, which is just at the end of the platform here at Queen's Road, Peckham. Now the signals jump to a double yellow. I am just going to give us a medium power to bring our speed back up to around 25 miles per hour. I certainly don't want to go too much faster than that whilst we're running under single yellow signals, as the signal sections on this particular line are quite short, and I don't want to be caught out and end up going through a red signal. Or should I say passing a signal at danger. We're now passing Queen's Road, Peckham. I've now idled the power as we pass the single yellow signal. We're doing 25 miles per hour, and as you can see we're on quite a sweeping right-hand curve, which means it's very difficult to see any signals which are coming up. As a result of that, in a moment I am going to brake down towards 15 miles per hour, just until I can see the next signal and I'm sure whether or not it is showing a clear aspect or a danger aspect. Here we've got a 60 mile per hour Morpeth board warning, which I think might be incorrect as the line speed is already 60 miles per hour, though at this point we've got half a mile to go to an upcoming 20 mile per hour speed restriction, which comes into force just after the next station, which is Peckham Rye. We're now coming up on Peckham Rye Station. I believe that the AWS warning we just had is for this 20 mile per hour Morpeth board just here. And on the right hand side in a moment, we're going to join the Catsford Loop line, which is actually going to feature in an upcoming video on this channel, as I'm going to drive a run from Gillingham to London Victoria in a class 466 and 465 combination. The signal ahead has now cleared to a double yellow, so I'm just going to increase the power now to bring up the speed of the train towards 20 miles per hour. As the 20 mile per hour speed restriction is about to come into force, there's certainly no point in accelerating to any more than that at this point. I've now just shut off the power to allow the train to coast at 20 miles per hour, and we're now diverging away from the South London line. And as you can see here, the speed limit is just about to increase to 35 miles per hour. Once again, we're changing the CSR area, so in a moment you should hear a beep from the CSR system in the cab. I can now start accelerating up towards the new 35 mph speed restriction, now that we've reached the signal just there. So you just need to wait until the signal past that restriction, and then you can begin to accelerate. We are currently on a 1 in 100 uphill gradient, which is significantly affecting this unit's ability to accelerate, which is, as you've already seen, isn't exactly the greatest acceleration to begin with. Certainly when you're on a gradient like this, it takes quite a long time to gain any significant amount of speed. On this journey, we're actually following the path of the London Bridge to West Croydon services, which run today and are run by Southern trains. So they normally leave London Bridge, go through South Bermondsey, then onto this route, and then ultimately through Tulse Hill, Streatham Common, and on through Selhurst to West Croydon. So we're following the path of that journey almost all of the way until just after Selhurst station, where we turn off towards the depot. We're now passing through East Dulwich station, and the speed limit is just about to go up to 60 miles per hour. I am just going to shut off the power for a moment just to ensure that we don't gain too much speed, as the gradient did level out there. And now we can start accelerating up towards the new speed limit, though I do have to bear in mind here that we are travelling under a double yellow signal, so unless that signal changes, I'm not going to accelerate too much. It has now just jumped up to a green. We're now coming up on North Dulwich station, and just after this station we've then got a severe 1 in 70 uphill gradient, which will definitively cause us to lose some speed. You might have noticed that there's a black mark now on the windscreen, and that's actually fly splatter, which has been simulated by Armstrong Powerhouse and happens a lot on trains in reality. In fact, the front of many trains, certainly in this country, tend to look more like giant fly spots than anything else. So I'm just going to turn on the wipers there just to get rid of that mark. Now turn the wipers off again, and the mark should be clear, and it looks like that I've stopped the wipers there in the middle of the screen, which I wasn't quite trying to do, so I'm just trying to sort out the wiper problem there. That's it, got the wiper finally stopped in the correct place. So we've just passed a single yellow signal and now need to drive with extreme caution as we're just about to enter a tunnel, and then the next signal is directly at the other end of this tunnel, and it's actually quite a blind signal as you can't see what aspect it's displaying until you're almost on top of it. So I'm now going to start applying the brakes to bring our speed down so that I can stop at that signal should it be displaying a red aspect. I've now brought our speed down to as low as 10 miles per hour. I think I can see the signal now displaying a yellow aspect, but I can't be completely certain, so I certainly have to drive with caution until I have certainty. I can now see there's a definitive yellow glow on the signal just outside the tunnel, so I'm going to start increasing our speed at this point. The signal has now just jumped to a green aspect, so I can now increase the power and head back up towards full power. quarter of a mile from the tunnel exit, the speed limit drops to 45 miles per hour, and so we're just about to pass through Tulse Hill Station, and then the 45 speed restriction comes into force just after. The line towards Crystal Palace now diverges to the left, so we're now going to continue along this route, and in a short distance the speed limit will be increasing to 60 miles per hour. Just after this overbridge, however, there will be an increase in the gradient to a 1 in 100 uphill gradient, which once again will significantly affect this train's ability to accelerate. So now passing through a tunnel here, the speed limit has now gone up to 60 miles per hour. At this point we've got around 1 mile to go to an upcoming 15 mile per hour speed limit, where we turn off this route and out towards the Brighton main line from Victoria. And so I'm going to idle the power in a moment just before this second tunnel here, and I need to start applying the brakes just after we've passed through the second tunnel. We're actually going to be on a downhill gradient just here, which will affect our ability to brake and slow down, and so I need to brake quite hard just as we leave this tunnel up as high as 50 on the brake gauge to try and ensure that we do slow down for the 15 limit in time. So I've now got the brakes on. And certainly, as with the all block brakes, you can hear the block brakes there very loudly clamping on the wheels to slow this unit down. You can now see the next station just coming up, which is Streatham Station, and the 15 mile per hour speed limit comes into force just after we pass through Streatham. I am now reducing the braking, as I do think we might slow down just slightly too early here. I've now just gone to a very light brake application to gently continue bringing us down towards 50. Now that we're at 15 miles per hour, I'm just going to allow the train to coast here. The 15 mile per hour speed restriction comes into force as we cross this point to the left. In a moment we're going to be on a steep downhill gradient, in fact as steep as 1 in 28, which means I am going to need to use the brakes to maintain this unit speed and ensure that we don't break the 15 mile per hour speed restriction. We're now starting on the steep downhill section, so I'm now just going to start bringing the brakes into play here to try and maintain the speed. And we've now got a clear signal. Because the last one was a single yellow, I also had to bear in mind that I may have had to stop at this signal, but it is now clear. Now increasing the brakes further, as I can see our speed has actually just slipped to about 16 or 17 miles per hour, so I need to bring that down to 15 quickly. And just as we reach the end of this curve here, the gradient is going to level out once again. And we're just about to cross the junction here onto the Brighton main line, so we're crossing onto the Brighton down slow, and so we've got the slow lines on this side and then the fast lines are on the other side. The station that we're just about to pass through is Streatham Common Station, and just after we've crossed this junction the speed limit is going up to 45 miles per hour. I can start accelerating up towards 45 once we reach the station building coming up just ahead. I am now in full power to try and bring us back up towards light speed. The speed limit here has now just gone up to 60 miles per hour, so I'm going to accelerate up towards that, though I probably won't be able to get up to much more than 50 before I've got to start slowing down again. We're now coming up on Norbury Station. As we come up on the next station at Thornton Heath, there will be a 45 mile per hour speed restriction in force, so I'm just looking out for the warning board for that now. And as we pass the warning board, I'm then going to idle the power, as the warning board is 1/3 of a mile away from the 45 limit. So we've just reached the warning board now. I've shut off the power here, and I'm just going to apply the brakes very lightly in a moment as we get towards this next signal. I'm just going to do that now just to ensure that we are down to 45 in time. And then I'm just going to simply allow the train to continue to coast at 45 miles per hour. Not too long after passing through Thornton Heath, we're then going to get further speed restrictions down to 40 and then 20 miles per hour. So I shouldn't need any more power at this point, pretty much all of the way through to Norwood Yard. We're now coming up on Thornton Heath Station. The speed limits here is going up to 60 miles per hour. However, we're only 2/3 of a mile from the upcoming 20 mile per hour speed limit and half a mile from the upcoming 40 mile per hour speed limit, so I'm not going to accelerate at this point. The 40 mile per hour speed restriction comes into force just before Selhurst platform, and then the 20 comes into force straight after Selhurst platform. So as we now approach Selhurst in a moment, I will then start applying the brakes. I can now see Selhurst platform coming up, so I've now got the brakes on to bring our speed down towards 20. The 40 mile per hour speed restriction comes into force at this point, and I'm now just releasing the braking as I feel that we might be slowing down slightly too quickly, So I'm just reducing that down now. And you can see there's some points coming up just ahead, and the 20 speed restriction comes into force directly on these points. So we are now down to 20. I'm going to allow the train to coast for a moment, then on this left-hand curve just coming up, we're then going to be on a down gradient as steep as down at 1 in 111. So I am going to need to use the brakes to control the speed to ensure that we don't break the speed limit. We're now passing Selhurst depot on the left-hand side. I'm going to have to drive all the way past the depot before doing the reversal back into the siding where I need to park this train. So I'm just using very light braking here to ensure that we don't break the speed limit, and I've been maintaining us at a speed of around 18 miles per hour. As soon as we reach the end of this curve, the speed limit is dropping to 15 miles per hour. I believe this is the 15 coming up now. However, this 15 restriction is not marked on the HUD, so if you're driving with the HUD turned on, you may get a bit of a surprise when it suddenly tells you that you are speeding. So we're now down to 15 miles per hour, the brakes are fully released, the gradient has leveled out. I can allow the train to coast along here, but I'm actually just going to give us a notch of power, just to try and ensure that we don't slow down too quickly. As you can see, we're now running on the ground signal, so we've got the 2 white lights there indicating that we are cleared to proceed ahead. And in a moment we're going to cross a series of slip points into the siding where I need to stop the train. The slip point that we just crossed didn't actually appear to be set correctly for the direction we were travelling in, so I guess that's more of an animation bug within Train Simulator itself. So I've now shut off the power as we're now in the siding where I need to stop, and where I'm aiming to stop is actually by the buffer stops on the left hand side that you can see coming up in a moment. So we should now be stopped in about the right place, though I did stop a little bit harder there than I planned. What I now need to do is actually shut down the cab at this end of the unit, and then go to the other end and start up the cab at the other end. However, just to save time in this video, as you've already seen the setup procedure, I am going to cut that out now. So I'm just going to pan to a shot of the outside of the train, and then I'm going to jump into the other end, ready to pull up into the siding in Selhurst depot. Departing away from Norwood Yard, the starting speed limit is still 15 miles per hour, and at this point we've got around 2/3 of a mile to go to our stopping point at Selhurst Depot North. So what I'm going to do here is just gradually bring our speed up towards 15 miles per hour, and then I'm going to idle the power just to allow the train to coast. Just noticed the train there with the doors wide open. Unfortunately, that's a bug within Train Simulator which I've been noticing happening a lot more recently. It seems to be caused by setting a train to stop at a platform, but not giving it any specific wait time. So the train literally stops and then starts again, but it starts while the doors are still opening, and as a result the train will then drive along the route with the doors wide open. So in any scenarios I create in the future, I'm certainly going to try and prevent that from happening. Of course, this isn't a scenario which I've created myself, but is instead one which came with this particular train. So I'm just coasting here at 15 miles per hour. I shouldn't need any more power at this point, and we should just be able to get all of the way to the siding at this speed. Selhurst depot is the maintenance depot for Southern Rail in London, and indeed a number of trains are stored here. I think a number of drivers work out of here as well, and so empty coaching stock is stored here overnight, or trains are brought here for maintenance from all over the Southern network to then be sent out during the day to various stations ready to run passenger services. We're now coming up on our stopping point, which is next to this class 455 coming up just ahead. I'm not going to get a lot of time at the end of this scenario, as it's going to end very quickly once I've stopped. So at this point I just really wanted to say thank you very much for watching this video. I really do hope that you have enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you have. Also, please don't forget that for the latest channel updates you can find me on Facebook, and that's the best way to follow what I'm doing. And the link to my Facebook page is in the description of this video. Also, if you'd like to sponsor anything towards the work that I do, then please see my Patreon page for more information. Again, the link for that is in the description of this video. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and we should now be stopping in just about the right place.